Hi, everyone. Welcome to Grants and Contracts. I am your co host, Lainey.
And this is Abraham. It's good to see all of you joining us live here on the Grants and Contract podcast, powered by the Government Contractors Association. And we have an awesome guest to hang out with us today. And Lainey, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our guest here with us.
Yes, so we have Dr. Tonya Thornton here with us, and she is a powerhouse. I'm so excited to just dive in, get to hear about everything that she's done, but some of her big recognitions that she has gotten is that first she was honored as top 40 under 40 by the International Association for Emergency Managers. So that is insane. That's a worldwide recognition. And she has 30 years of experience in securing nearly $30 million in federal contracts and grants. So she's on both sides of our grants and contracts. She knows a lot. She actually, how I met her is she is in our CCM class. So I know we've been talking about that a lot. That is actually what our next week's podcast is about. But that's how I got to meet her. And I was like, I've got to get you on this podcast. I've got to hear about all the wonderful work you do. So, Dr. Tonya, would you like to say a little intro, say hey to our guest?
Yes, thank you so much, Lainey. Thank you as well, Abe. Again, everyone, I'm Tonya. I'm the Vice President of Research and Development at the Global Connective Center, and I have a winding path of how I got here, starting out in academia, moving over into industry, and now I also have a foot in military. But we will get into all of that throughout the podcast. So I am very excited to be here today and to share some of my experiences in trial by fire.
Yes.
Well, what I want to know is I want to learn more about how you got $30 million worth of grants and contracts. So if you are joining us here, stay tuned because Dr. Tanya is going to go into how she got $30 million worth of grants and contracts. But if you're just joining us, if you could leave a comment in the comment area, put in your company, your organization name, and where you're joining us from, that helps us to give a little bit perspective of who's joining us here in as part of our audience. If you're watching this on replay, it's always great to see you on replay as well, and leave your comments as well if you're watching this on replay.
Yes. So I am joining from North Georgia. Abe is in Georgia as well, closer to the Atlanta area. Tonya, where are you joining us from today?
I am joining you all from Florida, although my company headquarters are in Washington, D.C.
Yes, I know. Me and Tonya have that in common that we love Florida. I was telling her that I want to move there. And so we had a long conversation about that. Y'all know my love with Florida. So, yeah, let's dive in. We have a lot to talk about. We have different people. Sometimes we have people that are able to join us, all around the world. So I love as those comments come in, we'll see those. And as always, if while we're going in, if y'all have any questions for Tonya, Abe, or me, just drop them in the chat. We will make sure to highlight those, when we get a pause for a second. But Tonya, kind of tell us a little bit about you. Maybe start up with some like fun facts. So I don't know if you know this about Abe. We always talk about his pickleballing. That's big lately. I don't know if you have a fun fact like that before we dive into all the nitty gritty.
Yes, I can hang 6 spoons from my face all at the same time. It was a talent
Wow.
that I developed after watching Molly Ringwald in The Breakfast Club be able to do a certain trick. And I was like, I need to have an icebreaker of some sort. So I started out with 1 spoon, then it turned to 2, then it turned to 3, and so on and so forth. And I've used different spoons from all over the world, and I've entertained different audiences, especially government officials in China, Cameroon, Croatia. So it's quite the party trick, but I'm also obsessed with otters, so we'll leave it there.
Oh, have you done the swimming with the otters?
I am scheduled to. I've played with them and created art with them, which is hanging in my bathroom right now, but I have not went swimming with them yet. It is scheduled. I got a rain delay, so there you go.
Yeah, that's something we have in common. I think otters might be my favorite animal. We have them at the Atlanta Aquarium. So I want to ask this, Tonya. You are you're a world traveler. You've been to a lot of places. How many countries in total have you visited or worked in, or all of that? I don't know.
So more than 30.
Wow.
I've been to more countries than I have states. Let's put it that way. I'm trying to work on a new country every other year and a new state every other year at this point. So that's a personal goal, as well as all continents. I got 2 more
Wow.
continents to go. So
Okay,
That's
that sounds
Antarctica
awesome.
and Australia.
Yeah, you know, when my wife and the guy we got married, we said we're going to go see all 50 states. And so we got to about 13, 14 states, and then we discovered cruising. And so we've been doing more cruising than visiting states. And because cruising is a true
You checking all those
relaxation.
countries.
Yeah, and then, you know, in countries too. But when you're traveling, you know, either by flight or by car to a state, it's a lot of hard work. And
It is.
cruising is you just get onto the boat and turn off everything, and then you're really, you know, you're in true relaxation mode. But you know, we need to get back into seeing more countries and seeing more states like you have.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
one of the top on my bucket list is the Antarctica cruise. I just think that's so insane. I always thought it would be cool to go to Antarctica, and now like I feel like it's feasible. So that's on the top of my bucket list. But for those of y'all that are just joining us, we have Dr. Tonya Thornton here with us. She is going to tell us all about her 30 years of experience in different sectors, but it's contracts and grants. So we're really excited to dive in. So Tonya, kind of tell us a little bit about your background, your history. I know that you've done a lot of stuff. So whatever you want to share with us to get us into the
Sure.
conversation.
So one slight correction. Thank you for thinking I have that much experience, but I only have 20 years of experience. So, and when I get to the military piece, it'll make more sense because I don't think the military will give an age waiver for someone in their 50s quite yet. Maybe we're getting there, but I appreciate it. So, like many of you, I'm sure you know your interest in research and development or some type of contracting began in your undergraduate career. Mine began at Mississippi State University when I was working at the Social Science Research Center under Dr. Arthur Cosby, who was the long time director, really amplified it and made it what it was at that time throughout his career. In any case, he had his hands in just about every type of social science project. And so as a newbie undergraduate student, I got a lot of exposure and I was able to kind of use my courses as a way to like amplify what I was learning in the classroom and to apply it when I was working with him. And so I fell in love with R&D so early on. It really derailed a lot of my other professional interests because I got to do something that was very creative, and I got to do something that allowed me to do a little public health, a little public safety, homeland security, something with the geosciences flair with disasters. And so I really didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I mean, I did, but this allowed me to explore rapidly a lot more than I would have ever been exposed to just in my undergrad degree. So it kind of mushroomed from there. I stayed on at the university. Worked full time after I got my undergrads and ended up getting a master's in public policy and public administration. It's 2 fields because oddly enough, the acronym MPA was already taken for public accountancy. So they decided to merge the 2 degrees together as an MPPA. I tried to go to another university to get my PhD, and Mississippi State kept calling me back. So I have what you call the kiss of death of degrees. I've got essentially 6 degrees from the same institution. So my boss at the time's like, I'm going to make you go to Duke. I'm going to make you go to MIT. You're going to go study with the University of Michigan. So I'd got a lot of executive education training as well. And most of it focused on management, innovation, and leadership. And we always talked about grants and contracts. So again, I was just always coming back to, all right, how do we make the world spend in all sectors? So that's a little bit about me.
That is so exciting. I mean, I think it's cool too to see a very different side of it from kind of that academia side of it. We see a lot of different, maybe the business owner side of it and that kind of things, or me where I'm more of a consultant, but being able to see it because we know that some of the largest grants do go to schools and academia. I mean, that is where a lot of the grants are, a majority of them go. And so I think it's so cool to have like you coming in and talking about that experience. Abe, what do you think?
Well, now you have both sides to it, right? From academia perspective as well as from an entrepreneurship perspective. So that's kind of unique. You know, my background is I got into the government world from a business, you know, perspective, and so I don't know if I have all of that credential behind my name, but you are probably the smartest person in the room everywhere you walk into. So super
No.
encouraged that you're hanging out with us today, so that you can share all of
Hardly.
your wisdom, all of your knowledge to our audience and some of the people who are joining us with us today here. But I want to shift gears a little bit. So with all of these experiences, how did you tell us about your first grant or your first contract? Because that's really what our audience wants to know is what's your
Okay.
origin story of how you got to that first one?
So I'm going to come at it from the perspective as a someone that's written in as a name on a contract, not as your program manager,
Sure.
not as your PI or your co-PI. You have to build your pedigree and your
Hmm.
reputation in order to be successive in your winnings, right? You need to understand from the lowest level of individual that is working on your project as a research associate all the way up to a project coordinator to the actual investigator. And so over the course of time, you really understand what it takes to not only pull a proposal or a project or contract together, but also to execute it successfully on time at budget. I didn't say under budget, at budget, and
Hmm.
then be able to provide those deliverables to effectively close it out and to, perpetuate your reputation so then other people see that you're a success, right? So we always talk about past performance. So it's really that pedigree of building your past performance from every role that you've played on a project or a contract all the way up to actually executing and going after becoming that capture manager or the VPR of some sort
Hmm.
in the development phase. So my very first project was with the American Cancer Society. I was a research associate on it. It was with the Mid-South Division, and we were looking at essentially people's perspective on the DEA cracking down on opioid use for terminally ill cancer patients and also those with severe burns. And we wanted to understand what the disconnect was between the policies that were being developed by the federal government and how they were being perpetuated down to the state level versus what the public perception of what was the real problem, right? Because at the time, this is when pain meds were being pushed by doctors. And this was really before the opioid crisis really exploded. But we were trying to get ahead of what that conversation would look like. So then that way we could better inform policymakers. We could share our expertise with different organizations that were similar to the American Cancer Society. So that was my first project. It was only $120,000. I was not a co-PI, but I essentially ran that project for Dr. Cosby at the time, and it was a success, right? We were able to get several we deemed it the pain project. And
Hmm.
still to this day, some of the articles that came out of it are some of the highest rated or cited in the
Hmm.
country for pain in that specific
Wow.
area. So we
Mhm.
translated that project not only with the deliverable, but then we published practitionally on that subject. So that was my first project. And then I was hooked.
Well, that's actually a very good origin story of your first taste of grants and contracts. And for some of you who are joining us, you know, you're thinking, my first one, I want to go get a $20 million project
No.
or $50 million project. That's probably not the best approach. So learn from what Tonya is sharing here, that you want to get started and ease into this here and don't bite off too much more than what you
Yeah.
can chew. And because there's a lot to learn, there's compliance, there's reports, there's staying on budget. There's a lot of different things you have to learn in this process. So don't go out there and jump too deep into the end where you feel like I can't swim. So start off by tiptoeing into it and
Bite-sized.
easing yourself into the water.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Abe, because when I was a faculty member at George Mason University, I essentially served as the director of grants, a quasi associate dean of research of sorts, right? I was attending all the meetings, I was assisting faculties, creating workshops in order to help shepherd them through the research. Administration and infrastructure. In any case, I would have newly minted PhDs come up to me, and I was newly minted as well, but I had 10
Mhm.
years of experience because I worked full time in my graduate degrees in R&D. They would come up to me and say that they wanted $1 million grant and they had no background, no past performance, and even like a $5, $10, $20,000 contract. Nor did they have any co-PI experience or as a scientific, a key scientist or a research associate. No naming rights, right? I know I'm using that term loosely, naming rights, but I'm like, how can I trust you? Or better yet, let me put on my contractor who's my funding hat. How can they trust you to be successful if you don't have a co-PI with you or someone else that has had this pedigree in their background? Well, I have a PhD. I go, well, you just piled yourself higher and deeper because it's not going to get you there. So I'm so glad you pointed that out. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Find yourself someone to partner with and strike up a deal to where you can serve as force multipliers for each other.
And Tonya, I would love for you to talk a little bit about this idea. Everybody wants that huge contract, but these, I mean, and you can kind of talk this to this first contract, but you've done large contracts and you've done small ones or smaller grants. But even, I mean, first off, $100,000, $150,000, that is a lot of money. Okay. So I think in our minds, we hear all these millions and billions and we think like that is so tiny. Like that is a lot. Like that can do a lot of stuff. That is paying full people's salaries, like all of that. But the time differences of, $100,000 grant can still be a full-time project. We're not, even though it's a smaller one, it's smaller because the money, not because of the time and the effort and all of that.
Right. Well, when you start looking at even, let's just break it down to $100,000. You have to look at indirect. If you don't have it approved, indirect rate with with the federal government, it's 15% now. So that's 15K. That's off the top. Then you have to look at who all's on the project. Is it a full time? Is it part FTE? Is it 20%? What are some of the other fringe benefits that are going to cost you? Usually, across the continental U.S., it's around 30, 33%. You work with someone in Hawaii, it's up to 60%. It really is a numbers game. Then you have to look at what kind of software you need, what kind of travel requirements are involved, who are you going to pay to collect your data, that sort of thing. So $120,000 or even $100,000 is not going into your pocket. It's being spread across a number of activities and personnel. And so, and it's not like it came to me, it went to the university, right? So, your salary is structured for a reason. So then that way it doesn't look like you're double dipping. So, and it also allows you to build a bridge account too. So that way, when you have those moments where you don't have a contract that's active, or say maybe you don't have 100% FTE, you can go back and use what you've kind of stashed away, which is like a very minimal amount. But a lot of people take that for granted. But if you're an individual or you're a small business of 2 or 3 people, $100,000 goes a long way.
Yeah. On the same topic there, if you are, Tonya shared a lot of different terminologies there. Talk about direct costs, indirect costs, and pricing, all these different things here. If you are curious about how to learn all this stuff here, next Tuesday, we actually have a pricing class that's coming up. So if you're interested in that, I'm going to put the link in there. And so you can dive deep into that side of it. So look into the description area or the comments area, you'll see that link.
Yeah, that's a great addition, Abe. So Tonya, I want to ask this, and I don't want to give it away before you explain it, but you went into the military. Tell us how you kind of got there. Okay. So you've told us a little bit about the academia. Tell us about the military.
Sure. Okay. So my backgrounds are in political science and geosciences. So essentially, I was trying to weave a geointelligence program or degree together. This was in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, and they didn't exist. And so I thought I was going to be an analyst somewhere, but I fell in love with R&D. In any case, now the university has reached back out to me and asked me to craft this syllabus because geointelligence programs are where it's at these days. And I'm like, okay, well, while I was in undergrad, because I worked full time and I was a double major and I was in a sorority, I didn't have time to do ROTC. And I really didn't know that much about it. I just had a family history of military service and I respected them very much. A lot of them were in my classes. And so I got to know the caliber of individuals that I wanted to be like? Well, fast forward. Well, in my graduate degrees, I was working full time, and we all know that working full time doesn't always mean 40 hours, especially in R&D. It is what it is. Sometimes it's a 60-hour week, an 80-hour week. The same is also true for graduate degrees. You may have to read 1,000 pages for one class in 1 week. So I never got the opportunity. And by the time I left with my PhD to go to Northern Virginia, I just was a new career, new people. You kind of find your cultural footing. So when I decided to leave academia and start working for General John Wharton, when he established the Global Connective Center, I was like, what have I not done that I've always wanted to accomplish? So I'm laying there and I'm like, you know what? It's time. So at the young age of, 41, it was September 11th. And I was laying there and I was asking, a higher power of what should I do with my, my newfound freedom, because I'm not teaching anymore. I mean, every once in a while I'll do an adjunct class, but I'm like, what can I do? What have I always wanted to do that I've never done? And I said, I should check into this. Well, I was too old for Air Force. I was too old for Navy at the time. I was too old for Coast Guard. So I was like, I better get on it. 42 is the cutoff. So I went into rapid action, got myself signed up, not officially, because you have to go through all these procedures and health checks. And I was like, you have to work, or you have to write a personal statement and get all these character letters. And so I was like, who do I know? So I reached out to a lot of my colleagues in DC, including General Wharton. I'm like, I need a letter. I need some kind of statement saying that, I should be in the Army National Guard at the age of 41. So I joined when I was 42. I went to basic training because I couldn't get a direct commission. And they sent me to officer candidate school. And, if you don't know much about officer candidate school for the Army, it was born out of Ranger School at Fort Benning. It's no longer Fort Moore. It's back to Fort Benning. And it's rough. So if I had made it, which I did not, I came really, really close, and I can't be recycled because I'm too old. Either they'll give me a direct commission at some point, but I am going to end up most likely being a warrant officer, which is probably better in my wheelhouse in terms of my expertise, because I am a subject matter expert for DoD already. So a lot of my fellow trainees, both at basic training and officer candidate school, are like, is she an agent for DoD to kind of like check out the cadre? I'm like, no, I'm just really a glutton for punishment. I really just want to put myself through a lot of physical pain. So I joined. I'm going to be a geospatial technician, an expert. And so hopefully when I get done with my next training assignment, then I will be well into my way as an officer. May still be on the table, but most likely a warrant officer. So, and it really marries well with the types of projects I'm already doing for the Global Connective Center that focus on DoD critical infrastructure. So it's a win-win. So, and it brings in emergency crisis management as well. So, and I serve my home state.
Oh, okay. So that was what I was going to ask. Like, when you go into, I don't know if you go, like, have to go certain times and stuff like that. Is there a specific base you report to? Is it?
Yes. So I joined the Mississippi Army National Guard because I was born and raised in Mississippi.
Okay.
And obviously that's where my degrees are. So I know a lot of the individuals already there. I could have joined Florida or somewhere else, but it gives me the flexibility to maintain my civilian lifestyle, or fulfill the career goals that I want for the DoD, as well as, serve my state. So I report to Camp Shelby, which is in just southeast of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. So about an hour, 15 minutes from northeast of New Orleans, to give you a geographical reference. Yeah, it's a very large regional training facilities in the southeast, and it's hot and humid, and the mosquitoes can kill you.
Now, for the civilian people or the average people that do not know what a warrant officer do or what that's all about, can you give the layman a little bit more insights into what that is?
So you have your enlisted and your non-commissioned officers that are the general individuals that either have degrees but don't necessarily have a degree when they join, right? Or maybe they didn't do our OTC, which they call ROTC in some military branches. In any case, officer is typically the ones that are your lieutenants, your captains, your generals, and they're the ones that are making the policy decisions for the DoD and the military. Your warrant officers kind of serve as your subject matter experts, and they have one area that they're going to fulfill. So if you've got an NCO that at the higher level, but mostly if you have an officer at a higher level that needs a specialty project or an assignment completed in a rapid fire environment, typically that warrant officer is going to be the one that they just put over in the corner and let them do them, right? To really meet the needs of a specific project or contract. And by contract, I don't mean in the traditional sense of what we're discussing, but yeah.
I want to read a couple comments that we have. So we have one person, her name's Brittany. She is an Air Force vet, and she said, warrant is better for what you want, for sure. And
Thanks,
then we have
Brittany.
another person that her name is Stacy, and she said, Army vet, commissioned at 45. So that's
You need to
exciting.
reach out, Stacy. I would love to know.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
So we mentioned a little bit about this, and I know we want to mention this is, so it's the 25-year anniversary of Katrina, which is just so insane to me, that it's been 25 years.
20. It's
But
only been 20.
I'm sorry, 20
No worries.
years. It happened in 2005. But do you want to talk a little bit about your experience with that? So another thing about Tonya is that she did work with FEMA, correct?
As a university employee, yes.
Okay. Do you want to talk a little bit about Katrina, or just anything you kind of want to add with that? Because I know you mentioned New Orleans, so I had to bring it up.
Of course. I mean, it's 2 days away from the 20th anniversary, as you were just noting, Lainey. So I am from Mississippi, but I grew up in part in Louisiana, mostly around the New Orleans area. In any case, the weekend, not of Katrina hitting, but the weekend prior, I attended an event with my former boss, who's like a father to me, Dr. Cosby, and his family put on this event called March Madness, not to be confused with March. That's in March, and it has to do with basketballs. This has to do with fish. Just want to clarify. And we were down there, and we were listening to his weather radio, and it's the Mississippi River has different passes. So we were close to Southwest Pass is where we were fishing, redfish mostly. And they were talking about Tropical Storm Katrina and how she wasn't going to really make up much. She's going to actually pull east and go out into the Atlantic, fizzle out and die, which we just saw with Aaron, right? Okay, so that was similar to what the projected path of Katrina was going to be. Well, I was in grad school, and at the time, I was not in policy and administration. I was in geosciences. Remember, I was a double degree, and I was like, ooh. So I was in coastal systems, natural hazards, anything to do with disasters. And I'm like, oh no, I can feel it. She's going to come right here. You could feel the energy on the water. You could feel it in your bones. For someone that was born in the Mississippi Delta that can feel tornadoes, I could just feel it because I was seeing water spouts that day. I was like, no. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of circulation. She's going to come here. So we leave his boat down there. We return back to Starkville, Mississippi. And a couple days later, he's like, do you think I have time to go get my boat? I'm like, surely they're going to issue counterflow here soon. Well, they didn't. And he's like, should I go get my boat? I go, at this point, if you want to go get your boat, you're going to have to sacrifice your truck. In any case, the boat didn't make it. It was in, I guess, a storage unit is where a lot of people in Plaquemines Parish would park their boats and leave them down there. And so boats float, vehicles don't. So there was somebody did go get their boat, but they left their vehicle in storage unit because when he was able to return after, months of clearing damage and building back roads, his boat was on top of a Suburban. So that really inspired me because, we had impacts in Starkville, Mississippi as well, significant ones. And most of where my family lives is in the Jackson area and down. And so they were without power for 3-4 weeks, right? And just utter devastation on the coast. Okay. So it really had significant impacts to Louisiana and Mississippi. A lot of people often forget about the Mississippi because of everything that happened due to the cascading events and compounding interest we saw in, the city of New Orleans itself, right? With the levees and the flooding, that sort of thing, and then the mayhem. In any case, I was already deciding to shift over into public policy, public administration. So emergency management became my kind of go-to interest at that time. It was public safety, homeland security, and now it's squarely going to be emergency crisis management. And so some of my studies started focusing on the aftermath of Katrina, monitoring people's perceptions, working with NOAA, with the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, different type of sea grants, and so we really started trying to get a pulse on what kind of impacts Katrina had along the northern Gulf Coast, and so we shared those results with FEMA. NOAA is separate from FEMA, but and then 5 years later, not to the day, obviously, we had the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. So a lot of those relationships were in place. So I was one of the first individuals that was able to go out, because I knew all the people down in Plaquemines Parish. I was able to go out on the boat with BP, Coast Guard, FEMA, and a lot of the other contractors looking for the oil on the water. So at that point, I was almost finishing up my PhD, and my dissertation ended up being on Deepwater Horizon oil spill.
Wow.
Based on the stuff we were doing with Katrina, because it was a 1-2 punch in the area.
Yeah, and talk about natural disasters. I think Katrina really set I think that's probably the tone that led to a whole new world where natural disaster became common. Really, we are at the early stages of the hurricane season and so forth in the southeast coast and down there. And we've seen a lot of changes since Katrina. Every year, we're talking about $50-100 billion worth of a disaster in terms of whether it's fire related or hurricane related or rainstorm, lots of different things happening. And so if you're just joining us here and you are in the natural disaster or disaster response or any type of work like that there, stay tuned, because, we usually about this time every year, we put on a how to support those that's been impacted by, natural disaster from a relief perspective. And so we're talking about how to get registered with FEMA, how to get registered as a vendor for the federal government, how to work with local organizations, because FEMA and federal agencies have a local first initiative to support the local community. They want to work with contractors who are local first. If you're outside, you want to have a strategy of and have those local companies in place first. So 20 years passed by very fast. I remember we were in real estate at that time when Katrina came through, and so some of the individuals who were impacted came to Metro Atlanta, and so we actually gave some of our homes to some of the people.
Wow.
Instead of renting them out. We say, hey, what can you pay? If you can't pay anything, you can stay here for a period of time. So we did that with some of the homes that we were doing in real estate at that time. So thank you for your work and some of the things you've done related to, and then that continues to have impact to this very day, those early days of work that you've done.
Oh, for sure, Abe.
I can remember, so my dad works for AT&T, so he's done a lot of disaster relief over his career, but that's one of the last people that go in because you have to have power. Like, you can't have a phone without power and cleanup and all that. So he goes in on later, and he didn't go in for Katrina till 2008. So it was 3 years later when he went in for, it was hurricane relief, but it just took that long to get everything set up to where he could come in for the phone lines. And now, of course, it's fiber and Wi-Fi and all that. But back then it was mainly the phone lines.
Well, I mean, I was just in Biloxi, Mississippi over the weekend, spending time with family. And, it's really interesting to me that where you go will always, if they were there pre-Katrina and they survived, or they had some type of concrete structure and they built back, they will always display that watermark.
Yeah. That's so intriguing.
So I was just going to say real quickly, for my master's capstone, it was a contract that the County of Hancock worked with the Stennis Institute of Government. And as part of my graduate requirement, we had to help reclassify position descriptions because there's no county left, right? I mean, geographically, jurisdictionally, there is, but there's no tax base. So there were 5 of us that chose that project to go down and kind of help reclassify those positions. And the stories that we heard from some of the individuals that remained, a lot of them gathered, like 10-15 of them gathered at the local courthouse or city hall or county hall, whatever. And they got on the roof and held onto the flagpole, but they wrote their social security number on their arms with permanent marker in case they got washed away. Luckily, all of them survived. But those
Mhm.
stories we don't hear about, and a lot of
Yeah.
documentaries that are coming out right now because they're all focused on Louisiana. But these are true stories, and the way in which communities came together to fulfill different types of contract requirements, either pro bono or through some other mechanism through the public spending. So.
So a
Yeah.
lot of our audience, what they want to know is,
Mhm.
how, if you were using all of your experiences, how would they go about getting some grants or contracts, whether with FEMA or with DoD or with any other agencies? What are some advice you can share with them?
Okay, the best piece of advice that I can share is that if you've never been awarded a contract, you need to find a prime. Okay, it's very difficult to serve as a prime if you already don't have that portfolio behind you, or you don't have that name recognition, that classification as a subject matter expert. It is a who's who's game, and it's unfortunate, but that is the way in which contracting world works most often, right? Not just here in the United States, but everywhere. The great thing is that particularly in the areas in which I'm working in now, which is no longer it is emergency crisis management, but I'm more on the critical infrastructure protection side, especially grid security. Everyone wants to play well together in the sandbox, but there can be issues of trust, right? So you need to not just reach out to someone as a cold call. You need to build up those relationships and be part of a carefully curated ecosystem of partners, right? And so the way you do this is you volunteer to serve on a podcast so people get to know you or see your face. I'm like, I remember you. Or you go to conferences. It doesn't have to be a very expensive conference. It doesn't have to be a very long lasting conference, but you need to have all the materials in your back pocket, as Abe would say in the CCM program, the Certified Capture Manager program, to be able to have that name recognition. And that way you have some type of recall in their mind. But you also need to be sure that you're sending follow-up emails to say, hey, it was really nice meeting you. Thank you again for the time that you spent with me, and the business card. A lot of people just stack up their business cards and don't ever do anything. So they're going to fade out of memory very fast. So there's a way in which to build out your relationships, your networks, but you need to sustain them. So you've got to really understand what it means to have social capital and political trust. And no, I'm not talking about our political atmosphere. I'm talking about
Mhm.
just trust that you're going to do the right thing and you're not going to circumvent them if they introduce you to someone, right? Because then you'll do reputational damage to yourself. But
Yeah.
going at it alone or curating your own team for your first time, if you've never been awarded, is probably going to result in a no-go. So finding the right players and saying, hey, I'll do all the work if you'll serve as the prime. The prime doesn't necessarily always have to get the lion's share of the money. Sometimes they do. You have to look at the contract requirements. But if you're smart about it, you will marry yourself to a successful team, and then you'll continue to build out your relationships with other trusted partners.
That is the best advice I've heard in many, many, years. Uh, the I heard this terminology a while back. It says the contract is in the contact. What is
I like
missing
that.
in the word contact is the letter R, which stands for relationships. So the contract is in the contact and the R is missing. If you have the R, you get the contracts. And so sage advice from Tonya. Now, I will say relationships are important, but you have to build trust, right? If you don't have trust, they're not going to subcontract work to you, or they're not going to want to
Mhm.
team with you. And so it's how you build relationships.
Oh,
And I've
yes.
seen where people go, small organizations, whether you're a nonprofit or you're a for profit, and you go to a large organization, and the first thing you say is, "Hey, I'm a small organization. Can you subcontract me some work?" And that's not the best approach, right? Because everybody's knocking on their door asking for a piece of the pie. So you really don't want to use that approach, because I mean, every now and then you might run into somebody who really is just in the right moment, right timing, where they're looking for someone to sub out some work to, or looking for a small business to support them. But that's the wrong approach. The best approach in terms of finding a teaming partner or a large prime to work with you is take something to the party. And
Yeah.
here's what I mean by that. You find opportunities that's much bigger than what you can handle, and you take that project to a large organization and you say, hey, I've been talking to the contracting officer, I've been tracking this project here. The contracting officer is interested in potentially working with us, but it's larger than what we can handle. Can you serve as a prime or as the large company on this here? And we would do a portion of it and you would do a portion of it. That's how you start a relationship. Bring something to the party. Don't just go crash the party and eat up all the food. Bring wine, bring food to the party, and you will always get invited into that party there. So that's my piggybacking on what Tonya just shared there in terms of building relationship. That's a great way of how you build relationships.
Yes, and I'm really glad. I'm really glad that you brought that up, Abe. That contract is in the contact, but keep in mind that these contractors are not looking for a rinse and repeat solution. You cannot just completely dust off the title of a project or a proposal and be like, oh, here it is again, here it is again, here it is again. And the same is also true with your teams. If you have dead weight on your team, get rid of it. If they're your buddy, they're probably not qualified. I know that one of the biggest challenges I have, and I'm just speaking candidly, is that I have people that want to bring on everybody under the sun that they want to take care of. Well, this is not a family reunion. This is a project, right? You need to actually have people that have experience in executing material that can be a part of that deliverable. Because at the end of the day, if you don't satisfy that contracting, scope of work, you're never going to, you're going to get dinged for it. So no rinse and repeat, and no same contacts or on your contract that are not actually producing anything for your deliverable. So yeah, no dead weight. And
I think that is an amazing point, because I think sometimes, I think you see this with all teams. We're not just talking about grants and contracts here, but that dead weight can really bring you down, and making sure when you are choosing these teams, you want the best of the best on your team, whatever that looks like. So if that is, it can be a small business. We're not saying it doesn't have to be a small business. It can be, like you said, a subject matter expert you have coming on, whatever that looks like, but having the best of the best for your team and the specific project that you're doing. And that could change project to project. You're not always going to have the same team for every single initiative that you're going after.
And the other thing I would offer is that when you walk into a room, whether it's with an opportunity for a contract, or you're doing a pitch, or you're working on the actual project after it's been awarded, just remember, one person is not the most powerful, decorated, smartest individual in the room. Collectively, you all are, right? So you have to share the floor, kind of like what we're doing right now. So thanks to Abe for thinking. I'm usually, he said earlier on, and it's laughable that you're probably the smartest person in the room. I'm like, no. That's why I mentioned PhD stands for Pal Higher and Deeper. In the academic world, everyone is the smartest person in the room, but they're not. And so know your team, right? Know who plays well together. And remember, you all have a value add. Otherwise, you wouldn't have brought them into the room. And that just doesn't make for a very good thought leader.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you mentioned earlier the Breakfast Club, and some of the folks joining us today, they have no idea. Lainey has no idea what the Breakfast Club is.
I do know what that
Who
is.
Molly Ringwald is, and so forth. So we've been talking a lot about what you've done and what you've accomplished, and some things you've done to get to this point here. I want to shift gears a little bit, talk about the future.
Okay.
So when you grow up, like what is it that you want to do? And
I have no idea.
and tell us about tell us a little about your current organization, and then what some of the things you guys are doing to help with Global Connective, and some of the work that you're doing with different groups and different organizations out there. Sure. What is it that you're doing with different municipalities, with different organizations, with different agencies, and the future of what you see related to technology and some of the things that you're doing as a integrator, solutions integrator out in the industry?
So the Global Connective Center really does focus on the word connective, and that's a big term in military language, connective tissue. It's really bringing everyone to the table in order to develop solutions and integrate them as quickly and as painlessly as possible, right? So it's important to understand that if you're in academia, what that jargon is, in the military, what that jargon is, if you're in industry, what that jargon is. Sorry, our website's being redeveloped, so probably not the best right now, because in the Certified Capture Manager program, one of my requirements is to kind of help beef things up. So been working with our crew on that. In any case, because the GCC was established by General John Wharton, he really wanted to focus in these industry areas. I would consider them critical infrastructure sectors, so agriculture, energy, water, communications, which IT is separate. It's kind of an undercurrent for all of them. And so he kind of made me the hat for the director for CIP. But these days, I mostly focus, like I said, in emergency crisis management and energy security for DoD military installations. In any case, looking at it from the two questions of where do I see myself in the future, or who do I want to be when I grow up? I'm still trying to figure that out myself, Abe. I just want to actually have one meaningful project, which I've done several already, but just what the next one, right? I look at it as the next notch in the belt. It's like the next country on the list. I'm like, what's the next project that I can do that will be meaningfully contribute to our country's security and economic vitality, right? So I can get into something I've done in the past that kind of gives you a little insight as to where I'm headed in a moment. But as far as the GCC, yeah, we have both a national and international footprint. And so different entities or different individuals that represent different entities will use and leverage their contacts around the world to kind of curate new project teams, go after different opportunities, whether they're partnering with other industries, working with non-government organizations, working with other governments, like in Cameroon or the United Arab Emirates, or in this case, Ukraine. We have a project with Ukraine currently. I really can't get into a lot of that, but know that it is on the rebuilding focus, rebuilding, reconstruction sort of thing. But what we're looking at doing is developing these solutions in a way that are sustainable and that really lead to some type of smart effort. So I'm currently part of the former National Institute for Standard and Technology Smart City program. It's now been privatized. So I'm on the whole community preparedness, like super cluster is what they call them. So somebody is on IT, somebody's in transportation. I am on, whole community preparedness. I think I answered your question. Sorry, that was a lot.
Give us a deeper dive into what a smart city is, because that just sounds so interesting. So give us a little bit more deeper insight into that.
So sorry, my cat's meowing. I had to throw my little mouse cat holder thing over to him. In any case, a smart city, a lot of people, almost like resiliency and sustainability, they're going to define it in any way that fits their field, right? They're going to pigeonhole it. But if you look at resiliency as a methodological approach to becoming sustainable, it applies to every discipline, every field, every sector. The same is also true with smart cities. It could be one intelligent system that then creates the next intelligent system. So it is essentially becoming what I call the 4 E's, becoming efficient, effective, having efficacy, and also expedient. So if you can do those things in order to provide a better, resilient, and sustainable community to your constituents, then you're becoming smarter and smarter by the day. Now, does that mean that it's going to happen overnight with all systems? No. Does it mean that you have the funding to do even one project? No. Having the discussion, joining certain venues to kind of understand where it's headed, yeah, that makes you're getting smarter. You're understanding that there is this need, and there are solutions out there, and there are teams that are willing to work with you to get you where you need. Now, there's some teams that are going to charge you a flat rate. There's going to be other teams that are going to gouge you, and then there's going to be teams that may not have some of those highest capabilities, but they're willing to work with you because of their motivation to serve the public and their loyalty to do what is right by society. So smart cities, yeah. But I can tell you about a project that started smart cities too, if you like.
I was going to say, is there any specific cities that you classify as smart cities? Or I know it's kind of a work in progress. I know probably all cities are a work in progress, but
right now there's several, and you can go to the GCTC website. I can drop it. It's called Open Commons now. In any case, it stands for Global City do you see Global City, Global Teens, something, I don't remember because we changed it. The city of Coral Gables, Florida. Their chief innovation officer is really on top of it. He is part of the team that I was talking about, and throughout, they're also home to the FIFA World Cup. So,
Mm.
think about the challenges that are going to be presented when you're having a multi-country, multinational sporting event in which everyone is equating to some type of Super Bowl. No, 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 no.
Mm-mm.
This is soccer. Football is on a whole nother international level.
Yeah.
No matter what your industry is, it's going to have an impact on you regardless. And so they've been working knowing that contract is coming to get their city ramped up, like public Wi-Fi just about everywhere. Well, then there's a cybersecurity element that they have to be thinking about, especially when we've seen the uptick and ransom hostageware, for local governments. You have to have your transportation systems. It's in the middle. It's in hurricane season, but it's at the beginning of hurricane season, and we know it's not at the peak. But what kind of other disasters, what kind of natural or human induced kind of events could occur? What kind of impact is it going to have on TSA at the airports? What kind of impact is it going to have on law enforcement? So I'm glad you brought that up, because I dropped in the link a conference that I am the program chair coming up in Coral Springs, which is right outside Coral Gables, in a couple of weeks, and that crosses 9/11. And we're going to be doing a tabletop exercise to discuss just this. What are some of the challenges that we're not thinking about making cities smart, but also how can we get them to think outside the box of what is possible, similar to 9/11, right? So case in point, when I did teach, and I would teach, crisis simulations, how many of you know where Memphis is? Okay. You know what? It sits on the Mississippi River. You know that there's a earthquake, like a fault line there. If that fault line hits, there are no zoning requirements. And given the topographical, alluvial deposit, the entire Delta area, I'm not talking about the Mississippi Delta at the end of the river, the whole cultural region will essentially be jello. And it will knock out every bridge along the Mississippi River. What is that going to do to transportation and economic activity across the western and eastern part of the country? You don't even have to do that. You could just have a targeted attack of 18-wheelers going across and blow the bridges all at once. These are the things that I think about and dream about at night. And so thinking outside the box, it's not meant to scare people, but it really will take integrated solutions and people coming to a table, like a tabletop exercise, to discuss it out and be like, all right, what capabilities do I bring to a potential project or contract to solve our next great challenges and wicked problems of this country?
I'm going to give you another title. Your other title is you're a futurist. Meaning that, because really what you're doing is when you think out of the box, you have to think about the future. You have to think about the past. You have to understand how technology and people capital work together. And so that's really, part of what you do is, as a futurist, how do you see the future? How do you see the world? I fully, have a tremendous amount of respect for what you're doing. I like to dumb things down a little bit for the rest of us who are everyday laymen here. Okay. So smart city is like remember when the phone was dumb, right? We had, and then we had smartphone, or when the TV was dumb, right? And the only thing you did with the TV was you can turn it on and off, and then you have to turn the knob, or, eventually we got to a remote control where we can actually change the channels. So we went from smartphones or dumb phones to smartphones, and regular old TV to smart TVs. And really what Tonya is doing is, how do we connect technology, the internet or IoT, right? The Internet of Things. How do we connect things to everyday life and make our lives better by making our city better and making our city more safe and making our city more connected to the internet and more connected to technology, so that a city can operate more efficiently, more effective, so that our lives would just be in an easier place. So love what you're doing with that there.
Thanks.
We've got a little bit of time left.
Okay.
Before we wrap up here, if you are looking for potential teaming partners or organizations to work with, how should they prepare themselves to work with, to connect with you or to work with you? what type of organizations are you looking to potentially partner with for some of the work and efforts that you're doing?
So I'm going to drop my email into the box, the chat box. I'm sure that Lainey or you will post it somewhere. But if you think that what I've said today has resonated with you, please reach out. We can explore. I serve as, the VPR, the capture manager, a lot of business development. And if we're not technically in the space in which you are in, I'll help connect you with someone who is. But if you're doing anything with the Department of Defense that's around critical infrastructure, particularly energy, disasters, installation readiness, if you're doing anything regarding to Ukraine, those are the things that I'm currently working on, because not only am I out there curating these new teams, these ecosystems, I also have my own projects too, right? I can't just talk and not do. It's like, if you cannot do, you teach. No, I do. But we also have interest in health, telecommunications, rural broadband, just the connectivity of, you can have some type of satellite link, but in rural areas, there's still a great need. Water systems, especially wastewater, catchment systems, things like that, connecting, working things remote and island mode. We're doing a lot of things in that space as well. I can't speak to the other team members in terms of their areas of expertise. I'm just trying to give you a little bit about my background and sprinkle. If you're doing anything with law enforcement, traffic safety systems, CompStat, do that. What else? But yeah,
that's really interesting that you brought up rural broadband. That was a big project I worked on when I was I worked for my congressman, and in North Georgia, me and Abe were just talking about it. I've got to get up to date on what the current situation is, because I worked with them, many years ago. So I would hope that there are more options, especially for internet and stuff now, because that was a big thing we were working on, is there wasn't access to internet. There was, but you couldn't even send an email on it. It was so bad. It was such bad internet. So that was a big project that we worked on in rural North Georgia, of really mountain North Georgia, of getting internet, getting Wi-Fi, having people being able to have
smart.
this.
Yes. Because today you have to have it in order to perform a lot of the contracts. I mean, who knew that the COVID would push us into the next great paradigm of communications and meetings, right?
Yeah,
I knew it.
Well, and I saw it coming. In this world, it's a necessity now. It's used to, if you didn't have your phone, that was a necessity, your home phone, but Wi-Fi is a necessity. So people should have access to Wi-Fi. You don't have to you can live without Wi-Fi, but it's needed, kind of thing.
You should vacation without Wi-Fi.
Yeah. So that's interesting. That's something we worked a lot with when I worked at the congressman's office. That was one of our big initiatives. But yeah, so Tonya, it has been so amazing to talk to you. I'm actually going to reach out to you. I have a couple questions just about stuff kind of regarding stuff we talked about. But once again, I've put it on the screen so you can see it. It's her email. Reach out with her. We've also put her LinkedIn, so make sure to connect with her on LinkedIn. Any kind of closing thoughts, Tonya, before we log off for the day?
Okay, so just want to reiterate that in order to be successful in contracts, you really have to utilize your network. And it's not just about your network, it's about curating your own ecosystem of trusted partners that you're going to use time and time again, and listen to them if they have someone in their network that they're willing to make an introduction to be a part of your team, because you're not the end all be all. You are replaceable. And your organization is replaceable. So you always have to be open to new ideas. Don't be a hog. Really be willing to play in the sandbox well with other individuals, and you'll go far. Because the best thing is what's better, a $0 grant or a $10,000 grant?
Yeah. 10,000.
Money is money. Yeah.
10,000
is still better than zero, right? So don't look at it as a zero-sum game. It's either this or that. Look at it as an incremental approach to really having that punctuating opportunity come your way.
That is great advice.
Well, if you're just joining us, we've been hanging out with Dr. Tonya Thornton, and she's shared a lot of great information. So if you're watching the replay, make sure you go and subscribe because we bring in different guests from time to time. And then Lane and I, every week, we do the Grants and Contract podcast. So if you hang out with us live here, join us next week. And Lane is going to put the link for our next podcast into the chat, so you guys can come and hang out with us next week. And then this coming Tuesday, we are doing the class on pricing strategies and how to legally spy on your competitor. So we're going to be talking about that this coming Tuesday. And we're going to show you some very cool tactics, how to, because a lot of this is public information and how to do that there. So come back and hang out with us. And if you're watching this on replay, like and subscribe so that you can get that notification bell every time we do this here. You'll get notified there. Tonya, it's been great hanging out with you here.
Thanks, Abe. And thanks, Laney. Can I make one final
Sure,
comment?
please do.
Look, even with the PhD, even with 20 years of R&D experience and understanding contracting, understanding proposal writing, development, the entire process, I still enrolled in the CCM program because there's so much more information out there that I'm just not aware of, or it's constantly evolving. So I would encourage you to continue to professionally develop yourself, and this is one of the ways to do that.
Yes, and Laney put in we here at the Government Contract Association, we developed a professional certification program for capture managers. For some of you who's not familiar with the term capture management, in the government world, we don't use the term sales or business development. We use capture development or capture management itself. And so that is actually approved by the state as a post-secondary educational program. And we are in the process of getting that approved with the VA also, so veterans can use their veteran benefits to be part of the CCM program. I'm going through that process right now. And then we're also working with the Department of Labor so that if you are underemployed or looking to transition in careers, where the Department of Labor can use some of the federal benefits, the federal grants, to use the WOIA program to get into this program as well. So lots of things we're doing there. Capturemanagement.org. Lainey just put that into the chat. Learn more about what that is. And Tonya's, you're going to graduate in a few days. So excited stuff there.
I still got like 7 weeks, Abe. Thanks.
So it's coming. With that there, remember you are one contract away.
And one grant away from all your dreams and all your hopes and if growing your organization. So we will see you next week, Wednesday, 11:30 Eastern Standard Time, and you can always watch on replay. So hope everybody has a great week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody, have a good one.